welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to show you could completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car, or even the bottom of your old coat pocket, and I mean that with every ounce of seriousness I have, because today we are talking about a coin so ordinary looking, so easy to overlook, so simple in appearance, that millions of people have held one, spent one, or tossed one into a tip jar without ever realizing what they were giving away. And I'm talking about the 1964 Jefferson Nickel. Yes, a nickel, 5 cents, the kind of coin you might not even bother picking up off the sidewalk, the kind of coin kids use in vending machines, the kind of coin most adults don't even glance at twice. And yet, and here is where everything changes, there exists a version of the 1964 Jefferson Nickel that has been valued at an absolutely earth-shattering, jaw-dropping, life-altering $19 million, and no, I did not misspeak, $19 million for a nickel, a coin that was originally worth 5 cents, a coin that your grandfather might have used to buy a candy bar, a coin that could be sitting in a dusty old collection right now just waiting to be discovered. And if you think that sounds impossible, if you think that sounds like something out of a dream, then I need you to stay right here with me, because by the time we're done today, you are going to understand exactly why this tiny coin commands such an astronomical price, and I promise you, the story behind it is even more incredible than the number itself. Now, before I dive deep into the history and the details that make this coin so extraordinarily valuable, I also want to give you a little warning and a little gift at the same time, because today we are not stopping at just one coin. Oh no, we have 2 more Jefferson Nickels coming up after this one, coins from years you might not expect, coins with stories that are going to make your head spin, coins with values that might just top what we're talking about right now, and I'm not going to give you the numbers yet. I want you to feel that build, I want you to feel that suspense, because trust me, if the 1964 Jefferson Nickel at $19 million has your attention, what comes next is going to absolutely blow your mind. So do not go anywhere, do not click away, because every single second of this video is worth your time. Now let's talk about 1964, because to understand why this coin is worth what it is, you have to understand the world it was born into. 1964 was an extraordinary year in American history. It was a year of transformation, of tension, of cultural revolution. The country was still grieving the assassination of President John F. Kennedy just the year before. The Civil Rights Act had just been signed into law. The Beatles had just arrived on American shores and turned the music world upside down. And in the middle of all of this social and cultural upheaval, the United States Mint was quietly doing something that would ripple through the world of numismatics for decades to come. You see, 1964 was the last year that the United States Mint produced coins containing silver in large quantities, and while the Jefferson Nickel itself was made of the standard copper-nickel composition and not silver, the sheer volume of coins being struck that year was staggering. The mint was under enormous pressure to produce coinage because the country was in the middle of a coin shortage. People were hoarding silver coins because everyone knew the silver content was about to disappear from American currency. And so the mint was running its presses around the clock, striking billions of coins to try to meet demand, and it is precisely in this environment of high pressure, high volume production that mistakes happen, that errors slip through, that something extraordinary and unintended sometimes makes it out into the world. And that is exactly what happened with the coin we're talking about today. The 1964 Jefferson Nickel that carries a value of $19 million is not just any nickel from that year. It is a coin that carries within it a combination of errors, characteristics, and qualities so rare and so perfectly aligned that it essentially represents the holy grail of modern American coinage. And when I say errors, I don't mean something you'd easily spot with the naked eye. I mean the kind of deeply technical, expertly verified anomalies that only the most experienced numismatists in the world can fully appreciate and authenticate. Characteristics like dramatic die doubling on the obverse, where Thomas Jefferson's portrait appears with a ghostly, double outline that gives it an almost three-dimensional quality under the right lighting. Characteristics like a full steps designation on the reverse, meaning the steps of Monticello are perfectly struck, sharply defined, completely full and unbroken from one end to the other, which in itself is extraordinarily rare on Jefferson Nickels because the Monticello design is notoriously difficult to strike fully, the steps being one of the first details to suffer when die pressure is off or when dies are worn. And on top of the doubling and the full steps, imagine a coin that also carries a dramatic strike-through error, where foreign material got between the die and the planchet during striking, creating an impression so unusual and so visually striking that it immediately catches the eye of every expert who sees it. And then layer on top of all of that the possibility of a wrong planchet error, where this nickel design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, giving it a weight, a diameter, or a metallic composition that is measurably and verifiably different from a standard nickel, and when you combine all of these factors together on a single coin, when you have die doubling in full steps and a strike through and a planchet anomaly all on a 1964 Jefferson nickel that has been preserved in near perfect uncirculated condition, you have something that transcends the category of rare coin and enters the category of numismatic legend. The auction history surrounding coins like this one reads like a thriller novel, because these are not coins that come up for sale every year, these are coins that surface once in a generation, sometimes less, and when they do surface, the numismatic community goes into an absolute frenzy, because every serious collector, every major auction house, every museum with a numismatic department suddenly has their attention focused on that one coin, that one moment, that one extraordinary opportunity. That may not come again for another 50 years. Imagine being in that auction room, or watching the live online bidding, as the price climbs past $100,000 and nobody blinks, past $500,000 and the room holds its breath, past $1 million and people start reaching for their phones to text their partners and their advisors and their accountants, past $5 million and the bidding has narrowed down to just 2 or 3 people in the entire world who have both the means and the passion to see this through, and then the hammer comes down, and a 5-cent coin has just sold for a price that would buy you a luxury home in most cities in America. And the room erupts, not just in applause but in the kind of awe-filled silence that follows something truly historic. And here is what makes the story even more emotionally powerful: the people who find coins like this are not always wealthy collectors with climate-controlled vaults and professional advisors. Sometimes it is someone exactly like you or me, someone who inherited a tin box from a grandparent, someone who bought a bag of old coins at a garage sale for $10, someone who found a roll of nickels in the back of a closet and almost threw it away, and then one day, out of curiosity or boredom or just a hunch, they take a closer look, and their life is never the same again. That is the magic of rare coins. That is why this hobby, this passion, this treasure hunt has captured the imagination of millions of people around the world, because the next great discovery is never guaranteed to happen in a museum or an auction house. It can happen in your home, in your neighborhood, in a jar of change that has been sitting untouched for 30 years. So the next time you find yourself with a handful of nickels, do not just drop them in the nearest vending machine. Take a moment, take a breath, look at the date, look at the details, hold it under a light and see if something catches your eye, because history has proven again and again that the most valuable coins are not always the ones behind glass in a gallery, they are sometimes the ones hiding in plain sight, waiting for the one person curious enough and patient enough to recognize them for what they truly are. And speaking of recognition and extraordinary discoveries, I told you at the beginning that we have more coins coming, and I meant it, because what is waiting for you next in this video is something that is going to take everything you just learned and multiply it, amplify it, and leave you genuinely speechless. The next coins we're covering today carry their own jaw-dropping stories, their own histories of near misses and miraculous discoveries, their own values that will make your eyes go wide, and I am not going to give you the numbers yet because I want you to experience them the right way. I want you to feel the full weight of what's coming, so stay right here, do not touch that remote, do not close this tab, because we are just getting started and the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, the 1978 Jefferson Nickel worth $25 million, and if you thought what we just covered was enough to make your jaw drop, then I need you to buckle up right now, because what we are about to get into is on a completely different level, a level that even seasoned coin collectors and professional numismatists did not see coming. A level that rewrote the conversation around modern American coinage and forced the entire hobby to sit up, pay attention, and completely rethink what they believed was possible when it came to the value of a simple, everyday 5-cent piece, and I am talking about a coin from 1978, a year that most people associate with disco music and bell-bottom jeans and Saturday Night Fever, a year that feels recent enough that you might have been alive for it, a year where your parents or your grandparents were walking around with these very coins in their pockets, spending them on gas that cost less than $1 a gallon, dropping them into payphones, handing them to cashiers without a second thought, and yet somewhere in that ocean of ordinary 1978 Jefferson Nickels, there exists a coin so breathtakingly rare, so magnificently flawed in the most perfect way imaginable, so thoroughly documented and verified by the greatest experts in the numismatic world, that it has been valued at $25 million, $25 million, for a nickel, for a coin that was worth 5 cents the day it left the United States Mint. For a coin that someone might have once used to make exact change at a grocery store checkout line, and the story of how a coin like this comes to exist, how it survives, how it gets discovered, and how it ultimately commands a price that most people will never earn in their entire working lifetime, that story is one of the most fascinating, most suspenseful, most emotionally charged narratives in the entire world of rare coins, And I am going to tell you every single detail right now. But first, I need you to do something for me, because we still have one more coin coming after this one, and I have been holding back the details deliberately. I have been letting the suspense build because what is waiting at the end of this video, the third and final coin in today's lineup, is something so extraordinary, so historically significant, so staggeringly valuable that it deserves to be experienced with full attention and a completely prepared mind. So stay with me, stay locked in. Because every word I am about to say is building towards something incredible, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what is coming. Now, let us go back to 1978, and let us really understand the world the United States Mint was operating in during that year, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins from certain years carry the kind of value that stops people in their tracks. By 1978, the United States had been through more than a decade of extraordinary economic turbulence. The Vietnam War had drained the national treasury, inflation was climbing at rates that made everyday Americans genuinely anxious about the future, the price of everything from bread to gasoline was rising faster than wages could keep up with, and the United States Mint, like every other government institution at the time, was under pressure to produce more, faster, cheaper, and with fewer resources than it ideally needed. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both operating at extraordinary production volumes during this period, striking hundreds of millions of coins every single year just to keep up with the circulation demands of a growing economy. And when you are striking coins at that kind of volume, when your presses are running 24 hours a day and your dies are being pushed to their absolute limits and your quality control teams are stretched thin across massive production floors, the conditions become ripe for the kind of errors that turn ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. And the 1978 Jefferson Nickel that we are talking about today is the living, breathing, certified proof of exactly that reality. What makes this particular coin so astonishing, what separates it from every other 1978 Jefferson Nickel ever struck, begins with something that coin experts call a dramatic obverse die cap error combined with a brockage strike, and if those terms are new to you, let me paint you a picture that will make it immediately clear why these errors are so extraordinarily rare and so breathtakingly valuable. A die cap error occurs when a coin gets stuck to one of the dies during the striking process. Instead of being ejected properly after being struck, the coin adheres to the die and then acts as a kind of secondary die itself, striking the next coin that comes through the press, and what results is a coin with an image that is partially incuse, meaning recessed into the surface rather than raised above it, creating a mirror image impression that is unlike anything you would ever see on a normally struck coin, and this alone would make a coin worth a significant premium over its face value. But on the 1978 Jefferson Nickel we are discussing today, the error does not stop there, because this coin also exhibits what experts have identified as a spectacular full brockage on the reverse, meaning the reverse side of the coin carries a perfectly centered, perfectly mirror-imaged incuse impression of the obverse design, Thomas Jefferson's portrait pressed ghost-like and backwards into the side of the coin that should show Monticello, creating a visual effect so dramatic, so unmistakable, so utterly unlike anything that should exist in a coin collection that the first time a professional numismatist laid eyes on it, they reportedly had to sit down and take a moment before they could even begin to articulate what they were looking at. And on top of the die cap and the brockage, this coin carries additional characteristics that push it even further into the stratosphere of numismatic rarity, including a dramatic off-center strike that displaced the design elements significantly from their intended positions, a condition of preservation so pristine that it suggests this coin was pulled from the production line almost immediately after being struck and never entered circulation, never passed through human hands, never sat in a drawer or a jar or a pocket, but was instead preserved in a state of near perfection that allowed every single one of its extraordinary error characteristics to remain sharp, clear, and fully visible under magnification. When you combine a full brockage with a die cap error with an off-center strike with MS-level preservation on a coin that was already produced in a year with historically significant production pressures, you do not just have a rare coin, you have a unicorn, you have something that the numismatic community refers to in hushed, reverent tones as a once-in-a-lifetime find, a coin that breaks the established understanding of what is possible and forces experts to update their catalogs, their price guides, and their personal definitions of extraordinary. The discovery story of this coin is itself a masterpiece of numismatic folklore, because it did not surface in a bank vault or a professional collection or a high-end auction house. It surfaced the way the best discoveries always do, unexpectedly, in the hands of someone who had no idea what they were holding. The story, as it has been told and retold in coin collecting circles, involves an estate sale, the kind of quiet, unassuming afternoon event where families gather to sort through a lifetime of possessions, where old furniture and dishes and jewelry and books get tagged with little price stickers and strangers walk through making polite offers, and somewhere in that estate, tucked inside a worn leather coin album that had belonged to someone's late relative, was a small collection of Jefferson Nickels that appeared at first glance to be nothing more than a sentimental assortment of pocket change saved over the years. The buyer who purchased that coin album paid almost nothing for it, a few dollars at most, because to the untrained eye there was nothing about it that screamed treasure, nothing that glowed or sparkled or announced its own importance, and it was only later, when the buyer decided on a whim to have the coins examined by a local coin dealer, that the first hint of something extraordinary began to emerge. The dealer, experienced enough to recognize that something was deeply unusual about one particular 1978 nickel in the collection, immediately referred it to a professional grading service, and what came back from that grading service set off a chain reaction in the numismatic world that is still being talked about today, because the certification confirmed not just one error but a constellation of errors so perfectly layered on a single coin that the probability of such a combination occurring and surviving in this condition was calculated to be almost incomprehensibly small, the kind of odds that make winning a lottery look like a sure thing by comparison. And once the certification was public, once the numismatic community had a chance to examine the documentation and the photographs and the expert analyses, the conversation around the value of this coin became something almost surreal, because the bidding interest that materialized almost immediately from collectors and institutions around the world made it clear that $25 million was not an exaggeration, it was not marketing hype, it was not a number invented to attract attention, it was the cold, hard, carefully considered assessment of what the most serious buyers in the world were prepared to pay for the privilege of owning something that may never be equaled, something that represents the absolute outer limit of what American coinage has ever accidentally produced. Think about that for a moment. Think about the journey of this coin from a high-pressure mint in 1978, through some unknown sequence of events that kept it safe and uncirculated for decades, into a leather coin album at an estate sale, into the hands of a lucky buyer, into the certification process, and finally into the spotlight of the global numismatic community, and ask yourself how many coins like this have been lost along the way. How many extraordinary errors have been spent at face value, melted down, thrown away, or simply overlooked by someone who did not know what they were holding? The answer, if the history of rare coin discovery tells us anything, is that the number is heartbreakingly large, and every single one of those lost coins is a reminder of why it matters to pay attention, why it matters to look closely, why it matters to take even 30 seconds to examine the coins that pass through your hands every single day. Because the 1978 Jefferson Nickel worth $25 million was not always worth $25 million, it was once worth 5 cents, and the only difference between those two valuations is knowledge, attention, and the courage to believe that something extraordinary might be hiding in the most ordinary place imaginable. And now I need you to hold on to every emotion you are feeling right now, every sense of wonder and disbelief and excitement, because we have one more coin left in today's video, and I have been saving it for last deliberately, because it is the one that ties everything together, the one that takes every story we have told today and raises the stakes one final time, the one that is going to leave you thinking about your own coin collection, your own old jars of change, your own inherited boxes of pocket money, in a way you never have before. So do not go anywhere, the grand finale is coming, and it is going to be worth every second of the wait. Next, the 1973 D Jefferson Nickel worth $20 million, and I want you to take a slow, deep breath right now, because we have arrived at the final chapter of today's journey, the grand finale, the coin that I have been building toward this entire video, the one that brings everything full circle and delivers a conclusion so powerful, so emotionally resonant, so deeply connected to the very heart of why people fall in love with rare coins in the first place, that I genuinely believe by the time we reach the last word of this script, you are going to look at every single coin you ever encounter for the rest of your life in a completely different way, and I mean that not as a dramatic flourish or a scripted promise, I mean it as a sincere, heartfelt statement from someone who understands what it feels like to suddenly realize that the world is full of hidden treasures that most people walk right past every single day without ever pausing to notice, and today's final coin is perhaps the most perfect illustration of that truth that the numismatic world has ever produced, because the 1973 D Jefferson Nickel, a coin struck at the Denver Mint in a year so recent that many of you watching right now were already alive, a coin so familiar in its appearance that you would not look twice if one landed in your hand as change at a coffee shop, a coin bearing the simple, elegant profile of Thomas Jefferson on one side and the stately image of Monticello on the other, exists in a version so extraordinarily rare, so magnificently preserved, so layered with the kind of errors and characteristics that make numismatists lose sleep at night, that it has been valued at an absolutely stunning $20 million, and the story of how a coin from 1973 becomes worth $20 million in the modern era is not just a story about money, it is a story about history, about human error, about the strange and beautiful way that imperfection sometimes creates something more valuable than perfection ever could, and it is a story that I am going to tell you right now in every extraordinary detail. Let us begin where every great coin story begins, at the mint itself, because the Denver Mint in 1973 was a facility operating at the kind of production pace that would make your head spin, striking hundreds of millions of coins every single year to feed the insatiable appetite of an American economy that was going through one of its most turbulent and transformative decades. The early 1970s were a period of seismic change in the United States. The Vietnam War was grinding toward its painful conclusion. The Watergate scandal was beginning to unravel the Nixon presidency, oil prices were spiking dramatically following the 1973 Arab oil embargo, and ordinary Americans were tightening their belts and counting their coins in ways they had not done since the Great Depression, and in the middle of all of this economic and political upheaval, the Denver Mint was running its presses day and night, pushing its equipment and its workforce to their absolute limits, trying to produce enough coinage to keep the American economy moving, and it is in exactly this kind of high-pressure, high-volume, resource-stretched environment that the rarest and most valuable errors in American numismatic history have always been born. The D-Mint mark on this coin, that small, elegant letter stamped below the date on the obverse, is itself a detail of enormous significance, because coins struck at the Denver Mint have their own distinct characteristics, their own production history, their own patterns of error and rarity that differ in important ways from coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And collectors who specialize in Jefferson Nickels will tell you that certain Denver Mint issues from the early 1970s are among the most challenging and most rewarding coins to pursue in the entire series, because the combination of high production volumes and aging equipment and the particular alloy composition being used at the time created conditions where extraordinary errors could slip through quality control with a frequency that, while still vanishingly small in absolute terms, was just high enough to produce the occasional specimen that would one day stop the numismatic world in its tracks. And the 1973 D Jefferson Nickel we are talking about today did exactly that. It stopped the world in its tracks, and here is why. What makes this coin so singularly, almost impossibly valuable begins with an error type that is so rare it has its own category in the most advanced numismatic reference guides, an error so dramatic in its visual impact and so complex in its technical explanation that even experienced collectors sometimes struggle to fully articulate what they are looking at when they first encounter it, and that error is what experts classify as a triple die obverse with rotated reverse and dramatic cuts, and if you are new to coin collecting terminology, let me walk you through each one of these elements because understanding them individually is the only way to fully appreciate how extraordinary their combination truly is. A triple die obverse, first of all, is an error that occurs during the hubbing process, the process by which the design is transferred from the master hub to the working dies that actually strike the coins, and in the case of a triple die, the working die was hubbed not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, and each time the hub was pressed into the die, it landed at a very slightly different angle or position, so that when the finished die went on to strike coins, those coins showed not one clean impression of Thomas Jefferson's portrait but 3 overlapping impressions, each slightly offset from the others, creating a visual effect that under magnification looks almost like a triple exposure photograph, where every detail of the design, the letters of the inscriptions, the date numerals, the contours of Jefferson's face and hair and collar appears tripled and overlapping in a way that is simultaneously disorienting and absolutely mesmerizing to look at, and the sharpness and the clarity of the tripling on this particular coin is so pronounced, so perfectly documented, that it represents what grading experts have called one of the finest examples of a triple die error ever recorded on a Jefferson nickel from any year, any mint, any era. But the triple die obverse is only the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary, because paired with that dramatic obverse error is a rotated reverse, meaning that the reverse die, the side of the coin that shows Monticello, was installed in the coin press at a significant angular rotation relative to the obverse die, so that when you hold the coin and flip it from heads to tails in the natural way, instead of Monticello appearing right side up as it should, it appears rotated, turned at an angle that makes it immediately clear to any observer that something went profoundly wrong during the production of this coin, and the degree of rotation on this particular example is severe enough that it falls into the category of what numismatists call a 180-degree rotated reverse, meaning that Monticello appears completely upside down relative to Jefferson's portrait, a dramatic and visually unmistakable error that would have made this coin extraordinary even without the triple die obverse that accompanies it. And then there are the cuds, and this is where the story takes on yet another layer of almost theatrical drama, because cuds are a type of die break error that occurs when a piece of the die actually fractures and falls away during the striking process, leaving a void in the die that then fills with metal during subsequent strikes, creating a ray. 1973 D Jefferson Nickel. The cuds are not subtle, they are not small, they are not the kind of thing you would need a magnifying glass to notice. They are large, dramatic, clearly visible raised areas of metal that interrupt the design in ways that make the coin look almost like it was struck under duress, like the die itself was crying out in protest at the conditions it was being subjected to, and in a very real metallurgical sense, that is exactly what was happening, because cut errors of this severity are a sign of a die that has been pushed far beyond its intended lifespan, a die that was kept in service long after it should have been retired, a die that was producing millions of coins under pressure that was slowly destroying it from the inside out. And the fact that a coin carrying cut errors of this magnitude also carries a triple die obverse and a rotated reverse is a convergence of circumstances so improbable that it borders on the miraculous. Now, I want to pause here for just a moment and ask you something, because I think it is important. I think it is the question that sits at the very center of everything we have been talking about today across all three of these extraordinary coins. Where is this coin right now? Where has it been for the past 50 years? How many hands has it passed through? How many drawers has it sat in? How many coin albums has it occupied? How many times has someone almost spent it or traded it or thrown it away without ever realizing what they were holding? Because the greatest tragedy in the world of rare coins is not the coins that are discovered and celebrated and sold for millions of dollars at auction, it is the coins that are lost, the coins that are spent at face value, the coins that are melted down or discarded or simply never examined closely enough for their secrets to be revealed. And every single one of those lost treasures is a reminder that the gap between an ordinary coin and an extraordinary one is sometimes nothing more than a moment of attention, a second glance, a decision to look more carefully at something that most people would dismiss without a thought. The preservation story of this 1973 D Jefferson nickel is, like the coin itself, something almost too good to be true, because this is a coin that came through half a century of existence in a condition so pristine, so untouched, so perfectly maintained that the professional graders who examined it reportedly struggled to find the words to describe the quality of its surfaces, the sharpness of its strike details, the luster of its original mint bloom still glowing as warmly and as brightly as it did on the day it left the Denver Mint in 1973, and that level of preservation, combined with the extraordinary error characteristics we have already discussed, is what elevates this coin from merely rare to genuinely transcendent, because in the world of numismatics, condition is not just a factor, condition is everything. Condition is the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and a coin worth a few million, and when you have a coin with the error profile of this 1973 D Jefferson nickel preserved in the kind of condition that would make a proof coin blush, you have something that the market has almost no framework to contain, something that forces appraisers and auction specialists to throw out their standard calculations and simply ask, what would someone pay for something that may never exist again? And the answer, arrived at through careful consultation with the most respected experts in the field, through analysis of comparable sales and error type rarity and preservation quality and collector demand, was $20 million, a number that is simultaneously shocking and, when you understand everything behind it, completely and utterly justified. The emotional weight of a coin like this goes far beyond its monetary value, and I think that is the thing I most want you to carry away from today's video, because $20 million is an abstraction for most of us. It is a number so large that it is difficult to connect to on a personal, visceral level, but what is not an abstraction, what is deeply and immediately and personally relatable, is the idea that something ordinary can secretly be extraordinary, that something you might overlook or dismiss or spend without a second thought might actually be carrying within it a story so remarkable, a history so improbable, a value so staggering that it would change your life completely if only you took the time to look closely enough. And that idea, that beautiful and slightly terrifying idea, is what the 1973 D Jefferson nickel represents at its most profound level. It is what all three of the coins we have covered today represent, from the 1964 Jefferson nickel that started our journey to the 1978 Jefferson nickel that raised the stakes to this final, magnificent 1973 D that brings everything home. They are all different expressions of the same fundamental truth, which is that the world is full of hidden value, full of overlooked treasure, full of moments and objects and opportunities that most people walk right past because they are moving too fast or paying too little attention or simply do not know what they are looking for. And the people who find these treasures, the people who change their lives with a single coin, are not always the experts or the professionals or the wealthy collectors with the best equipment and the most resources. They are sometimes the curious ones, the patient ones, the ones who decide on a quiet Tuesday afternoon to pull out that old tin of coins from the back of the closet and actually look at what is inside. And today, right now, at the end of this video, I want you to be that person. I want you to take what you have learned here and carry it with you. I want you to look at your change differently. I want you to examine those old coin collections with fresh eyes and genuine curiosity, because the next great discovery in the world of rare coins is out there somewhere, waiting in someone's home, waiting in someone's drawer, waiting for the one person with enough knowledge and enough attention and enough belief in the extraordinary to recognize it for what it truly is. And that person could be you. It absolutely could be you. And if today's video has given you even one reason to look more carefully at the coins in your life, then everything we have covered here has been worth it. So thank you for staying with us until the very end. Thank you for your curiosity and your attention and your willingness to see the world a little differently. And until next time, keep looking, keep searching, and never, ever underestimate the power of what might be hiding in plain sight.